So welcome back, everyone. We're going to spend a bit more time looking at the different sensations that are very normal during labour and just spend a bit of time explaining why that might be the case. And if you're wanting to, there's a little bit of an exercise that you can do with this. You're welcome to send me an email, which is info, I-N-F-O, at Terry Georgeson, TerryGeorgeson.com, and I can email you out a copy of this exercise. So I'm just going to share my screen with you for a minute just to show you what the exercise looks like. So here you can see we've got different sensations that you might have during labour. So what we're going to be talking about is what are some of the early signs, what are some of the later signs, what are the signs that may or may not happen, and what are the signs that could happen in a number of different places. So this is what we're going to be looking at. So as you can see, we've talked a little bit about the show before, and sometimes early in labour, we find that we might start to have some mild contractions, and you can see that there's that question mark. Is it contractions? I'm not sure. Or it might be contractions in the back coming and going, reasonably far apart. You might need to concentrate. They may not be painful. You might be noticing maybe some diarrhea. There might be mild contractions. You might be feeling a little bit of a burst of energy that could be that nesting urge. And so those are all very common sensations that you might experience during labour, and especially in those early moments of labour. So when we have a look at our different charts, I just wanted to show you some examples here. So going back to our contraction chart that we looked at before, you can see this early part of labour, this is where we're really looking at those mild contractions. So you can see that the cervix still has a bit of work to do to open up around the baby's head. So there's a first step of actually shortening and then thinning and then opening out. So at this stage, mum's looking quite happy. She's excited. She's thinking, this is the start of labour. Or is it the start of labour? Not quite sure. So this is really a wait and see stage. And so the big difference here is often that if you're talking to a midwife, they will say to you, just talk to me, tell me what's happening. And often if mum's having contractions, they just want to hear what's happening when mum has a contraction. So if mum's talking away and she says, oh yes, it's been a good day, and yes, I'm having contractions and coming about every 5 minutes, and they're lasting about 40 seconds, and oh, here comes another one, and she keeps talking, then the midwife is likely to say, look, maybe just take it easy. If it's during the day, have something light to eat, go for a bit of a walk. If it's, if you like resting, have a bit of a rest, potter around the house. If it's in the evening, we'll often encourage mums to, get some sleep, get some rest if they can. So maybe, if mums waters haven't broken, have a bath or have a shower, have some time to relax, practice some breathing exercises or some relaxation exercises to help you to sleep. And, if contractions do move on and get to that stronger stage, you'll wake up and you'll get to a point where you actually feel you need to get up and start moving around. So, not to worry, but it can be very common, especially with the first baby. You might have these early contractions every day, could be sometimes for a couple of weeks, for a few hours a day. And then, you go to bed or you rest and contractions all ease off again. So it can be a little bit frustrating, but just to know that this is part of the normal pattern of labour. If, however, the contractions are getting into this stage, this is usually the time when we do suggest that mums would be travelling into hospital, because the contractions are nice and long and strong and not likely to stop. So in the early part, if mum's starting to get excited, it might be the start of real labour, but because she starts to produce adrenaline, your body starts to think, oh, there seems to be stress. Maybe this isn't a good time to have a baby. And sometimes your body can put the brakes on. So we really want to make sure that, contractions are nice and long and strong. Mum really has to focus through them. So if mum's talking to the midwife and she's saying, oh yes, having contractions every 5 minutes and they're lasting about 40 seconds, and here comes another one now, and you can hear in her voice she's getting ready, and you either hear her breathing through the contractions, or you might hear some of those oh kind of sounds, then the midwife can know that mum really is having good, long, strong contractions. It's much more likely to say to mum, look, yeah, definitely get your things together and come in. So if mum's waters break at any point, then that does change things. So normally once mum's membranes rupture, the best thing is contact the midwife again and organise to come into hospital. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of sometimes why contractions may stop in those early times if labour's not really well established, and why midwives will often suggest that you come in a little bit later. Of course, if you're living a little while away from the hospital and by waiting an extra hour, it'll be peak hour traffic and it'll be a nightmare to try and get in, it's always okay to say to the midwife, look, we're just worried that if we wait another hour, it'll be peak hour traffic, it'll be horrible. And the midwife can definitely sort of say, okay, well, it sounds like it makes sense for you to come in. So, listen to what mum's feelings are, advocate for mum with the midwife, and just, if mum's really feeling that she'd be much more comfortable in hospital, it's a good idea to, let the midwife know that and to go in. So those are some of the changes that are happening. I just wanted to show a little bit about the actual what's happening with the contractions as well, so that you get a bit of an understanding. So I'm just going to share that screen again so you can see. And you can see from the outside, this is the pregnant uterus. So you can see how much this is just a big muscle. There's different muscle fibers. So there's fibers down here that actually help to open the cervix up around the baby's head. Then the fibers are drawn to the top of the uterus. So they kind of bunch up there. They help to push the baby out. And once the baby is out, then there's what's called circle of 8 fibers that actually help to bring the uterus back to its pre-pregnant size. So the uterus, does an amazing job. If you think, I'm just going to stop for a minute and just find the other picture of the non-pregnant uterus, so you can do a bit of a comparison here. So you just need to find my chart again. Okay, my computer is having fun with me at the moment. Let me just find it and then we can have a look at it together. So I'm just going to bring it back up again so we can actually see it. Okay, there we go. So here is your non-pregnant uterus. So you can see what a difference. And usually within about 6 weeks after the birth, the uterus will be back to the non-pregnant size. So it is really quite amazing, the changes. And that's why mum will tend to have some contractions perhaps when she's feeding after birth, and some what we call after pains or contractions, just to help to bring the uterus back to its pre-pregnant size. So it is a pretty amazing organ all in all. So if we just have a look at some of the other signs that mum might be noticing as well. I'm just going to bring the slides back up again so you can see them. There we go. And so you can see here, as you get later on into the labour, some of the things that you might start to be feeling is those more intense contractions. More common for waters to break later on in the labour, although they can break anywhere. So the membranes can rupture. And as I said, that changes when you come in, and also a strong pushing urge. So definitely hope that you're in hospital unless you've actually had a planned home birth and you've got a midwife coming to the home. But really, if you're getting to that stage, it's always a good idea just to call the hospital back if you're not there, and to talk to the midwife and to get an ambulance to come to you, because often the baby's going to arrive quite quickly. So it's better to have that medical help on hand rather than trying to sort of get into the car at the last minute. So just definitely consult with your midwife and work out what the best strategy is to get you the help that you need. I mean, babies, if they're born that quickly, the good news is that there don't tend to be complications. Usually they're full of adrenaline and breathing really well. But, you just want to be a little on the safe side there. So just, having some oxygen and things on hand is always helpful. So just to sort of summarize, if we have a look at our early signs again, you can sort of see tends to be the show, perhaps contraction stopping again, perhaps some leaking of the membranes and the waters, perhaps some mild contractions or backache and that sort of question, maybe more regular contractions, again, sort of getting a little bit closer, maybe lasting longer. Questioning, is it labour? Maybe having some diarrhea. That nesting, the burst of energy, although that can also happen at different times. So sometimes you do find that, mums might get to a point where they're feeling like they can't keep going, and then they're supported to get through a few more contractions, and they have a burst of the natural pain relief chemicals that are in your body called endorphins, and then mum is actually fine to keep going. And also at the end with pushing and so on is another time that mums often experience a bit of a burst of energy. And then some of the later signs, as we said, often the waters might break with a gush later, but they can happen at any time or before contractions. The feeling sick is an interesting one. It can be common around the transition time when mum's body is going from that opening to the pushing phase. And so that's why we sort of suggest to mums that they have something light early in the labour that they can digest easily to give them a bit of energy. Keep drinking some water. Sometimes some sorts of labour aid or diluted fruit juice or diluted sports drinks can be helpful. But often mums, just all the energy from their body, the extra blood flow is going to the uterus. So the parts of the body that aren't important for labour, like the digestive system, and that includes the bowels, often it's like, nope, can't deal with digestion at the moment. So if there's anything in the stomach that can't be digested, get rid of it. If there's anything in the bowels that, needs to go, yep, get rid of that. And so that way mum's body can really just focus. And so with the blood flow, you might also find that mum might feel quite hot from the hard work of labour, but sometimes you'll find her hands and especially her feet can be very cold. So having a really warm pair of socks for mum might be a really good thing to include in your labour bag. So as I said, this gives you a bit of an idea. The contractions towards the end, often a lot stronger, so a 5-minute gap or less, 40 seconds long up to a minute. And then when you're into the really intense part, they could be even lasting a minute and only 2 minutes gap between them. So that's very intense. So we'll have a little bit of a look at that in a bit more detail in the next video with the chart. But just to give you a little bit of idea of, these signs that can happen that are quite normal, and just give you a little bit of a signpost as to where you are in the labour. So I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care. Bye.